Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is set to deliver a virtual address to EU leaders in Brussels as the 27 nations bloc meets to discuss defense spending and the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, in London today, the British Prime Minister will host a meeting of senior military officials to discuss plans for an international peacekeeping force in Ukraine. And this comes after President Trump suggested the U.S. could run Ukraine's nuclear power plants during a phone call with Zelenskyy yesterday. For more on all of this, I'm joined by CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd here with me in Studio 57 for once. Sam, great to have you here.
Good to see you.
A warm welcome. Help us understand the U.S. position compared to what we're seeing with this flurry of activity in Europe for Ukraine. Does it at all undermine what President Trump is trying to do, or does it supplement efforts to bring peace to Ukraine?
The work that the Europeans are doing really supplements efforts to provide support for an interim ceasefire as well as a longer-term peace for Ukraine. So this is really a dual-track approach. Of course, in the past, we saw the United States and the Europeans acting fully in concert. Right. There was a schism. During that late February Oval Office meeting when President Trump and President Zelenskyy had such a heated debate, the Europeans fully understood that they needed to take on even more responsibility to step in to help provide security guarantees for Ukraine, potentially more security assistance overall, and to plan around the United States perhaps not being fully present. So the Europeans coming together in a more cohesive way is a positive for Ukraine, as is the fact that now President Trump is back to not criticizing President Zelenskyy and, in fact, working with President Zelenskyy to try to get a peace agreement.
And there's been criticism of Russian President Putin for not really wanting to give up anything in this deal. The one area, though, we've seen this week Putin agree to is perhaps a stop on attacks of energy infrastructure. And now we're hearing President Trump say that maybe there is a U.S. investment in Ukrainian nuclear power or energy facilities. What do you make of that?
Well, we know that President Trump is looking for a way to recoup the money that the United States has spent in Ukraine. First, he wanted this critical minerals deal, and now he is saying that the United States could in some way take ownership of, for example, Ukrainian nuclear power generation capabilities. We also know that President Putin kind of agreed to this energy ceasefire. There was a call between President Trump and President Putin. Putin seemed to notionally agree to some kind of energy ceasefire, but the details still have to be worked out. And wars don't end in phone calls. What they end in is technical teams getting together, hammering out the details. And so the next step is going to be Ukrainian and Russian technical teams coming together to try to flesh out what counts as energy infrastructure. When would this ceasefire start, and other details.
We know that Zelenskyy had said in that infamous Oval Office meeting that Russia can't be trusted in previous ceasefire deals. Look at Crimea, for example. But from the Russian perspective, we know that talks will continue in Saudi Arabia at the end of this week into next week. What might the Russian position be as far as how they're viewing the playing field right now?
Well, we know that Russia wants to hold on to certain territory that it seized. We know that Russia does not want Ukraine to ever join NATO. They want those two issues off the table. What we don't know is what President Trump is prepared to do to punish Russia if they agree to a ceasefire and break it, or if they walk away from negotiations. So we are waiting to see what kind of pressure campaign President Trump could build against Vladimir Putin, if Putin's demands are unreasonable, or if he breaks the ceasefire that's put in place.
Which could be things like additional sanctions. Typically, that's what the U.S. is.
Additional sanctions, cutting Russia off fully from the international system known as SWIFT, reducing waivers that are currently in place even further on energy exports and the like.
All right, Sam. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great to see you and have you here.